You cannot believe, I cannot believe what has just happened. Somebody came up with the idea, and right now I'm smiling on it. So
what's news? I see you've got a nice Range Rover t-shirt on. Is that telling
Yep.
me something about what I'm expecting?
Yeah, bonkers. I told Jeremy about this project yesterday, and he laughed for quite a long time.
You know, Andrew's sitting here all the way in Australia, and he's sharing a surprise, really. The giveaways on his t-shirts got his Range Rover. Beautiful picture. I'm waiting for a t-shirt like that, and he's going to share with me now what this project's about. Now, if Jeremy had a good laugh, I'm curious as to what this is going to be about. So, are you going to share the surprise?
Jeremy said...
I've been waiting all weekend, you know that.
Right. Jeremy said to me, you've let this genie out of the bottle, you can't put it back. So actually it's a fait accompli, but I actually wanted to ask you what you thought first, but it's too late. So I'm going to, and this is absolutely live. Paul does not know anything about it. All right, Paul. I'm Andrew St Pierre White. Join me as I share my passion for building four-wheel drive trucks and travelling to the remotest parts of the world. These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join the Patreon family now. What would you say if I told you I was taking the Range Rover on the Canning stock route?
Jeez, wow.
That is to drive this car on the Canning stock route.
Okay, I can say one thing, that it's going to be an amazing trip. You will have the most comfortable ride. I'm not sure you're going to have enough space for fuel though.
And the only rule is, and I impose this, it has to be self-contained. In other words, it has to carry its own fuel. So that's your first concern, because obviously the fuel is a big concern, but the car will make it.
Oh, the car will make it, no doubt about it. I mean, if I think about the truck, I built a lot of those Range Rovers for people to drive through Africa. They're so comfortable. They're really a great truck. So, you know, with any vehicle like that, which has basically got all-style technology, well put together, well maintained, I don't think you'll have a problem. The biggest challenge is going to be carrying fuel.
Fuel.
You know, your space, your loading capacity.
Fuel. We're going to need support vehicles to carry spare parts, camping equipment, fuel, not fuel, but water, human fuel in the other vehicles. Support, yes. Okay, well, good. I'm glad you didn't react like, oh heavens, what on earth are you thinking, Andrew? Are you out of your tree? Because it is a 45-year-old car.
Which means there's a lot more work to go into the truck, because, you know, a car of that age, there are a lot of parts. It takes a long time to test a car, to actually put it into an expedition preparation. And I absolutely believe that with enough testing and enough preparation, the truck will sail through Canning stock route. You'll really enjoy driving the ride. I mean, it's going to be a really comfortable drive. And I think those ruts and the dunes coming up and over the dunes, you're going to just fly over them. I mean, that truck's light compared to other trucks. Are you going to drive it south-north now? I'm going
to do the same trip as we did. It's more satisfying, and you've got less sun in your face doing north-south in winter.
Yeah.
I know it. But the few challenges are this. Fuel, I will need to carry, I've worked out, to be safe, 200 litres in the back of the Range Rover. That's 150 plus kilograms in the back. And it'll obviously be supported. I'll have a crew with me. I'm not about to do that kind of thing on my own in a vehicle like that. That would
I take it you might have a Land Cruiser or two on with you?
I think that that 200 litres, if my trip down south, when I bought it and of course crossed from Melbourne, I got 14.5 litres per 100 k's. I was doing between 90 and 100 kilometres an hour my cruise speed. And I was not stressing the car at all, nursing it along. Would you say 25 litres per 100 k's would be safe for the Canning? considering I've got 200 kilos of
I think
kit in
on
there.
average, you are going to get, fuel's going to get less and less as you go along. So the car is going to become a lot lighter as you're driving.
Yes.
You're going to go with a lot less gear. I mean, if I think about the gear you don't need huge amounts of gear. So, you've got a support crew, which saves a lot of weight. I think the idea is to actually enjoy the trip, to take this vehicle, enjoy the trip, make it something of a memory. I mean, it's such an iconic route to do, and to do it in the Range Rover would be just amazing.
I think so. I will have my two favorite, all-time ever favorite four-wheel drives, with the possible exception of a 290 GD, on the canning with me. I'll have a Troop Carrier and a Range Rover, a two-door Range Rover, and I'll be doing my favorite piece of Australia.
It will be a wonderful memory. I think, like you say, you've had the Troopy, and he really has. I mean, the Troopy, if anything, is Andrew's heartbeat. And this Range Rover goes right back to childhood. When you grow up with a vehicle and it gives you those first impressions of being able to drive into the bush and really explore the wildlife, that's a memory set in stone in your heart. You never lose that. And I absolutely believe that, you will enjoy this, if anything, to treasure the memory for yourself. You build a lot of vehicles that you've done and enjoyed. But to do a trip that actually has a lot of meaning, not just for content, you're going to get amazing content. I mean, for sure, you'll have a lovely story to tell at the end of this. But I think the reality is it'll be one of those iconic trips. You come back from a trip and you sit down and you reflect back on what you've done and how you've driven this trip. And you'll actually say to yourself, I've really enjoyed this trip. It's given me something to make this all worthwhile. And that's what this is going to do. It's going to give you that worthwhile feeling, I believe.
I think I agree with you, and that's why I want to do it. I think for me personally, it'll be a big adventure, and there are some risks involved. But if I think to myself, well, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, if I have a catastrophic axle failure, it's pretty unlikely because we're not going to be heavy. I'm going to have the vehicle extremely closely, I'm worried about the shock turrets, for example. They might have a bit of corrosion that I haven't seen, that kind of stuff. So I will go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I will have that gearbox rebuilt. I'll put in a new clutch and I'll have the gearbox
I think,
done.
Your big components like your axles and your gearbox, that's critical to have those rebuilt. And I know you will absolutely make sure that you've got the right sort of spares. That's important.
Yeah.
And I think you will have tested the trip. A lot of people build vehicles up and they don't put enough time into actually testing the vehicle.
Yeah.
First off,
you
need to give it a good grounding, a good testing with the weight in it. How are you actually going to use it? Because components get stressed differently when they're empty and then you've suddenly loaded this vehicle up.
Yeah.
And it's really important that you fill this vehicle up with the amount of fuel you're going to carry. You drive it, you see how it handles, how the weight is. Get that heavy weight as far forward as you can. Make it safe. It's got to be safe. I mean, that's your biggest risk. If anything, there's a risk involved carrying all that amount of fuel.
Yes,
so it's worth looking at how you carry that fuel. Whether it's someone could, you get really good safe tanks, or if you're looking at jerry cans, you want to keep the weight off the roof as much as possible.
Yeah.
But putting fuel in the car is also difficult and a very tricky situation.
So I can have John build me 2 100-litre tanks. We will have a separate plumbing system. Laws in Australia dictate that as long as it can be removable without tools, it's then judged a jerry can and therefore is legal. If it's bolted in perfectly and plumbed in permanently, then it can't be done. But that's easy to do. We can strap it down properly. Yeah. Might have to put in some extra mounting points. That's not difficult. And then have a piping system. So in the evening, we put 60 litres into the main tank and switch everything off, close everything off, seal everything, and drive. So at no time while you're actually driving is that tank open or even being used. It's just carrying the fuel, and decant at night, and keep the weight low down.
No, you're right. And knowing those risks, any expedition carries an element of risk. And I think it's like anything, risk is mitigated by preparation and planning. And when you plan something and you put things in place, like specific things, this is how we're going to do it. You fly airplanes, you'd never get in your aircraft and ever think of taking off without doing a full pre-flight check, because your safety requires that. It could be one thing you miss. And this is even more important when you're taking a vehicle like this, that you do your checks on a daily basis, the weekly basis, get under there regularly, check things. The more checks you do, the less you're going to have problems. I think it's the fact that it's an old vehicle. I don't think the old vehicle actually has much of a concern with regards to it. It's how it's built, how it's actually going to be prepared. Because if you take an old vehicle and you really prepare it properly, you're going to have little or no problems, and then you go and test it to make sure you've got proper testing done and everything's secure. It's going to be great. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic project. Well done. It's very exciting.
Okay, good. I would invite you, but getting you to Australia with the current, it's impossible, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So otherwise, you'd be with me on the trip, but. And
I would love it, because Canning is such a special place for me. It was one of the big ticks for me to actually do that route. Yeah. And I have got amazing memories from Canning Stock Route. We really had a lot of fun.
Cheers, guys. To all our rallies at home, all our loved ones, we're thinking of you. But man, we're enjoying this. Wish you were here.
It was a great. Seeing some of the footage come up every now and then is just, it's special. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, okay. Good, Paul. Thank you for your confidence in my ability to do this. What are the chances of success? For those of you who don't understand the Canning Stock Route, it is Australia's longest, or certainly one of the longest, toughest, almost definitely the toughest, off-road tracks. And the reason why it's tough is because it's 1,600 plus kilometers of incredibly remote travel. If I don't make it, if the Range Rover breaks and we cannot get it out of there, we have to find a way of towing it out of there. It's far too valuable to leave. There are vehicles that have been abandoned on the Canning Stock Route because it's just not economical to recover them. There are not a lot of them, but there are. There are many trailers. It breaks cars. It breaks cars that are not well prepared. It breaks cars that are overloaded. Now, when I say that it's remote, I'm talking about the northern portion, or what I would prefer to do is take the route in the north to south direction. The first part is a little under 600 kilometers, and it's something like 500 sand dunes. The Canning Stock Route is one of the world's longest and most remote public tracks. Totaling 1,700 kilometers, a little over 1,000 miles, it's the longest cattle stock route ever surveyed, and that's basically what it is. For how many days is that? Probably average speed of 40 kilometers per hour. And during that period of time, if there's a catastrophic failure and we have to get the vehicle out, then we've got at most, say, 350 kilometers maximum, that we might have to tow the car. That center point is a place where we can get fuel. We have to organize it ahead of time, because it's not as if we're driving through a town. It's not a town. It's a tiny, tiny settlement, and we can organize fuel ahead of time. There is a mining road that leads to that town. So there's an escape route. This is the only piece of man-made infrastructure on the entire route. There's nothing else. And when I say the word nothing, I'm nothing. Not a telephone pole, not a fence. There's some fences right down at the southern tip where the track actually passes through some cattle stations. The cattle station takes an entire day or 2 days to drive across. So if you have a catastrophic failure, the southern portion is just under 1,000 kilometers. So we might have to if we had to, tow 500 kilometers off-road. Off-road. I can't take this lightly. But if I'm going to do it, I would have to know in my heart that the Range Rover was capable of doing it. If this vehicle was brand new, could it do it? No, actually. And the reason for that is that it cannot carry the fuel it needs. Or if it does carry the fuel it needs, then it can't carry, because then it will be overloaded. If it also carried spare parts, other bits and pieces that, camping equipment, food. Fortunately though, for canning stock, there is water. So every 3 to 4 days there are wells that now the wells were actually originally dug because it was a cattle stock route, and the wells were dug for the cattle, and a lot of those wells have been refurbished for travellers, so then travellers can now use the water. The water in some of them is really sweet, so that makes a massive difference. To be honest with you, if it wasn't for those wells, I would basically say, well, no, it can't be done because we can't carry the water as well. Madness. Imagine that. And I think I would get Rob Stokes to drive it with me. 2 old English geezers driving an old English lady on Australia's longest and toughest. I don't know if I can go left here. I can't. There's no clear indication. I think I can. So imagine that. Shit. So the cat is out of the bag. I will be doing the canning stock route in this beauty. And for me, I'm going to have on my favourite track in Australia, and one of my favourite in the entire world, both of my favourite four-wheel drives, a Troop Carrier and a 2-door Range Rover. I need to thank right now those that have made this possible. Of course, this is Sheikh Hamad bin Hamdan Al Nahyan. He is the brains and inspiration behind the Off-Road History Museum near Abu Dhabi. When he heard about the project, well, I was going to take an old girl like this and restore it and do something meaningful with it, and the fact that it has a solid front axle, he got excited and he offered his help in making it all possible. So thank you very, very much. What have I got to do now? Well, mechanically she needs work. It runs very, very well, even on the gravel roads here. Didn't even rattle much. I know about the electrics. They're okay. I've done a bit of work. Everything works. The drivetrain's good. We've replaced some of the parts already. The engine is good. We might have to look closely at the cooling. The big unknown is the gearbox. So I have to find now an LT95 gearbox. I either restore this one, but I can't find anybody in Western Australia who has been recommended to do a really good job. The other way of handling this is to have it buy a restored box. So that's an immediate challenge. But apart from that, I have so much confidence, and most of that confidence has been given to me by Paul, because Paul, as you heard, said, why shouldn't it do it? Honestly, prepare well, why shouldn't it do it? The rule is it must carry all its own fuel. That is the rule that we've set, I have set. But apart from that, with support, with some spares, what will stop us? Actually, if I think about it now, from the time this idea was mooted to this point, 6 weeks later, it scared me like you wouldn't believe when I first thought of the concept, the idea of doing it. And now, I'm very confident indeed that we will succeed. So, if you want to follow the events of how we prepare it, how we get it ready, and of course the trip, which is planned for June 2022, subscribe, hit the notifications button, and if you like the idea of this, give the video a thumbs up. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching. These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join our Patreon family now.